What if I told you that Samsung didn't start by making phones, TVs, or electronics at all? In fact, this global tech giant began as a small trading company selling noodles, dried fish, and vegetables. But here's what's even crazier. Samsung has built skyscrapers, roads, hospitals, created military helicopters and tanks, and even owns theme parks. But behind this incredible success story lies something far more controversial. A tale of government corruption, bribery, exploding phones, and a family dynasty that some say has more power than the president himself. This is the real story of Samsung. In 1938, a 28-year-old entrepreneur named Lee Byung-chul founded Samsung. He later revealed that one night he had a panicked realization that he was wasting his life. It was time to set a clear goal and build something meaningful. Despite starting with just a small grocery trading business, Lee had much bigger ambitions. He chose the name Samsung, which in Korean means 3 stars. Now, to many of us, 3 stars might sound like a mediocre product review, but in Korea, the number 3 represents something big and powerful, while star symbolizes something everlasting. Big, powerful, and everlasting. These words would prove prophetic. But first, Samsung would have to survive. The Korean War devastated Lee's business and the entire country. After the war ended, there was a massive shortage of goods, and Korea relied heavily on imports. Lee saw an opportunity. He decided to diversify and create affordable products for the public. First, he opened a sugar refinery. Then, using those profits, he built the largest woolen mill in the country. Samsung expanded into textiles, creating finished products like clothing. Diversification saved Samsung, so Lee doubled down on the strategy. He reinvested profits into even more industries, opening department stores, launching an insurance business. In fact, to this day, Samsung remains the largest insurance provider in South Korea. With all this rapid expansion, it wasn't long before Lee became the richest man in the country. But he was about to get even richer. In 1968, Samsung executives held a meeting that would change everything. They decided to enter the electronics market. A year later, Samsung Electronics was born. They created a 12-inch black and white TV, and within just a decade, they became the world's #1 manufacturer of black and white TVs. The floodgates opened. 1979, microwaves. 1980, air conditioners. 1981, 1 million color TVs produced. 1983, personal computers. But Samsung soon realized they were too reliant on importing small electronic components from abroad. So they did something bold. They bought a semiconductor company to control their entire supply chain. Not only did they use these chips in their own products, but they started selling them globally. One of their biggest customers, Apple. Yes, Samsung supplies memory chips for iPhones, despite being fierce rivals in the smartphone market. Most people know Samsung for smartphones and TVs, but that's barely scratching the surface. Samsung Heavy Industries builds some of the largest mega ships in the world. Samsung Construction built the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the tallest building on Earth. They also built the previous world's tallest building before that. They've constructed roads, tunnels, and bridges. They own South Korea's largest theme park called Everland. They have hotels. They even have an entire area called Samsung Town. Samsung runs a non-profit foundation that includes a university and the Samsung Medical Center. Yes, Samsung has its own hospital. From groceries to galaxies, Samsung's reach seems limitless. But how did one company expand so rapidly into so many industries? The answer is darker than you might think. After the Korean War, South Korea was economically devastated. The president wanted to boost the economy, so he decided to support large Korean businesses with extremely favorable loans, special tax breaks, and protection from competition. Samsung was one of the biggest beneficiaries. When Samsung entered electronics, the government banned several countries, including Japan, from selling electronics in South Korea, pushing consumers toward Samsung. The government also reduced taxes by 50% for electronics companies. Since Samsung was by far the largest, they benefited the most. The government was essentially funneling American relief money straight into Samsung. Why? Because Samsung's founder, Lee Byung-chul, had become close friends with South Korea's presidents. This friendship brought Samsung special treatment, fewer export limits, generous credit terms, and massive financial support. Lee even used government loans to buy the very banks that gave him those loans. Samsung became what's known as a Chaebol, a family-owned conglomerate built through close government ties. By 2014, Samsung composed about 17% of South Korea's entire economy. But with this power came corruption. When Lee Byung-chul died in 1987, his son Lee Kun-hee took over, and the controversies multiplied. 1996, Lee Kun-hee was charged with bribing a former president. Thanks to Samsung's government connections, the sitting president pardoned him. No jail time. 2008, he was accused of managing a political slush fund to bribe prosecutors and politicians. He was found guilty of tax evasion and embezzlement. He apologized and stepped down, but there was no jail time. Within 2 years, the new president pardoned him, and he returned to Samsung as if nothing happened. A book written by Samsung's former chief legal counsel alleged that Lee Kun-hee stole around $9 billion from Samsung subsidiaries, destroyed evidence, and bribed government officials to ensure his son would succeed him. Most of South Korea's media refused to even mention this book. Why? Because attacking Samsung is seen as attacking South Korea itself. The media didn't want to make an enemy of the country's most powerful company. Some have called Samsung invincible and above the law. One article even suggested that Samsung's chairman is more powerful than the president of South Korea. And the pattern continued. When Lee Kun-hee's son eventually took over, he too was found guilty of embezzlement and bribing politicians, just like his father. No Samsung story would be complete without mentioning one of their biggest disasters, the Galaxy Note 7. Imagine waking up to find your room filled with smoke. You look over, your Samsung phone is on fire. This happened multiple times in 2016. Airlines banned the phone from flights. But Samsung initially did nothing. They were slow to react, and only as more phones exploded did the media pick up the story. Samsung was forced to recall the product. It cost them over $5 billion, plus massive reputational damage. But here's what made it worse. The replacement phones Samsung issued also had the same overheating problem. Why? Because the issue wasn't just one faulty battery, it was the internal design. Components were crammed too closely together. The real root of the problem? Samsung's battle with Apple. Back in 2011, Apple sued Samsung for copying the iPhone's design. Steve Jobs publicly called them a copycat. Samsung executives were determined to prove they were innovators, not followers. So they rushed the Galaxy Note 7 to market with aggressive specifications and tight deadlines. Engineers recall the pressure was intense. It became a chaotic rush. In trying to beat Apple, Samsung had rushed development and skipped proper quality control. They'd sold millions of dangerous phones worldwide. And when people created parody videos about exploding Note 7s in Grand Theft Auto, Samsung tried to censor them with copyright strikes, despite having no legal right to do so. This backfired, creating even more controversy. Despite all the drama, both with their products and their owners, Samsung has continued to dominate. They've created innovative products like folding phones. They generate more revenue than Google and Microsoft. They'll no doubt continue entering new markets, from selling noodles in 1938 to building the world's tallest skyscraper. Samsung's journey is extraordinary. It's proof that with enough hard work and determination, anyone can turn a small business into a giant empire, as long as you're good friends with the president of your country and they're willing to funnel you millions of dollars in taxpayer money. The Samsung story isn't just about innovation and ambition. It's about power, corruption, and how one family built an empire that became too big to fail, and perhaps too powerful to stop.